In the New Caledonia sector, the battle collapses into knife range. Ships don't trade fire across distant void lanes here. They crash into each other's space, thrusters screaming, hulls scraping through debris, fighting so close that targeting computers stutter and crews aim by sight. A GSF destroyer and a faceless cruiser pass within a few hundred meters. Their guns fire at the same time. Rounds punch through armor and explode inside compartments. Shield flares pop and die. Point defense tracers stitch the gap like a burning fence. The destroyer's port side peels open in a long tear, exposing lit corridors and spinning equipment. Through the breach, you can see silhouettes moving, crew members tumbling in zero-G, emergency lights flashing, hands grabbing rails to keep from being pulled into open space. Across from them, the faceless cruiser is wounded too. A section of its hull is split like a cracked shell. Inside, you can see their crew, dark armor, faceless helmets, fighting fires and dragging bodies away from the venting edge. For a second, the two massive ships stare at each other through the holes they just tore open. Then another salvo hits. A missile detonates against the cruiser's side at point-blank range. The blast sprays fragments across the destroyer's bow, rattling the bridge. The destroyer answers with a broadside so close the muzzle flash reflects in the cruiser's exposed interior. The void becomes a cage of fire and drifting wreckage. Corvettes dart between larger hulls like predators, firing into weak seams. Fighters weave through gaps barely wider than their wings, dodging slabs of torn plating and streams of venting atmosphere. A faceless ship tries to rotate away, only to collide with a drifting wreck and grind its own hull open further. On every bridge, alarms scream. On every deck, boots slam against ladders as damage control teams race to seal breaches that won't stop breathing. And in New Caledonia, the war isn't distant or clean. It is close enough to see the enemy RS faces through the holes you carve into their ship. It is close enough to see the enemy RS faces through the holes you carve into their ship. The GSF destroyer slides past the faceless cruiser so near the hulls throw shadows across each other. For one breath, the breach-to-breach view lines up like a hallway connecting two worlds. A human damage control team is visible inside the destroyer, 4 figures in suits hauling a bulkhead plate into position. On the cruiser side, faceless troops drag a wounded crew member away from the venting edge. They lock eyes across the void. Then the destroyer's captain gives the order that turns the fight from battle to murder. Point defense, manual aim, sweep their breach. The guns don't track the cruiser's hull. They track the exposed interior. Tracer fire floods through the open wound, stitching sparks across the cruiser's corridor. Faceless shapes stumble, fall, vanish in smoke. The cruiser answers in the same heartbeat. Its own point defense rakes the destroyer's exposed decks, shredding the human repair team mid-step. Hook 1. Both ships are killing crews through open wounds. The distance is so small the shockwaves slap both hulls at once. A missile detonates between them and showers both ships with fragments like a sandblaster. The destroyer's shields flare and collapse. The cruiser's engine housing ruptures and belches flame. They're both bleeding, but neither can disengage without dying. The destroyer yaws hard and drags its broadside along the cruiser's flank. Guns, firing so close the muzzle flash lights the cruiser's broken interior like daylight. The faceless cruiser tries to roll away. A drifting wreck clips its starboard side. Metal shrieks. The cruiser's hull tears wider. Now you can see deeper. A command corridor, a blinking console, crew scrambling, hands slamming doors that won't close. Hook 2. The cruiser is trapped against wreckage and the destroyer is lining up a kill shot. A GSF Corvette darts in like a shark. It doesn't fire at the cruiser's armor. It fires into the exposed engine section, straight into the glowing guts. The shot hits and the engine coughs. The cruiser stutters in motion, its thrust failing in uneven bursts. The destroyer's targeting computer lags from the closeness and debris. So the captain does something reckless. Helm, ram drift. Put us alongside, boarding distance. The bridge goes quiet for half a second. Then thrusters fire. The destroyer closes until the hulls nearly touch. Riding the cruiser's broken wake like a knife on a bone, magnetic grapples launch and clamp onto the cruiser's torn plating. Hook 3. A boarding attempt begins at knife range while both ships are still trading fire. Fighters swirl around them, dogfighting in tight spirals through wreckage. A faceless interceptor clips a panel, loses control, and slams into the destroyer's exposed portside, detonating inside the breach. The explosion blows open 3 more compartments. Crew are sucked sideways. Alarms howl. The destroyer's captain doesn't pull away. "Boarding team, go!" A small airlock blows open. GSF Marines in sealed armor fire tether lines and launch across the gap, floating over a void that's filled with tracer fire and spinning debris. One gets hit mid-flight and tumbles away, tether snapping. The rest slam into the cruiser's hull and cut through with torches, sparks spraying into darkness. Inside the faceless cruiser, you can see them for a heartbeat. Silhouettes entering through fire and smoke. On the outside, the cruiser's guns are still firing. On the inside, the Marines are already fighting. And in New Caledonia, the battle doesn't have a front line anymore. It has a heartbeat. Every 30 seconds, something breaks. And the next thing that breaks might be the ship you're standing on. Every 30 seconds, something breaks. And the next thing that breaks might be the ship you're standing on. The boarding team punches through the cruiser's torn plating and drops into a corridor lit by emergency strobes. Gravity is unstable. Boots lift, slam, lift again. Because the cruiser's rotation is fighting its failing engines. Smoke crawls along the ceiling like a living thing. A faceless squad appears at the far end. Helmets smooth and blank, rifles raised. The first exchange is point blank. A Marine's muzzle flash fills the corridor and a faceless soldier snaps backward into the wall. Return fire sparks off the Marine's chest plates. One Marine takes a hit through a shoulder seam, staggers, keeps moving. Push, don't stop. They advance over drifting debris and bodies, cutting toward the command corridor they saw through the breach. Outside, the destroyer is still locked alongside, magnets groaning under stress. Its point defense guns keep firing, but now they're shooting at fighters threading through the wreckage. Tracer fire crisscrosses so close the gunners can see silhouettes in cockpits. A faceless bomber dives straight at the joined hulls. It releases a heavy charge between the ships and pulls up hard. The charge detonates. The blast slams both hulls at once. The destroyer's grapples snap free in a shower of sparks. The two ships separate violently, scraping armor as they drift apart. The boarding line goes taut, then jerks, then threatens to tear free. "Cut the tether," someone yells. A Marine slices the line before it drags them out into the void. Now they're committed. Hook. The boarding team is trapped inside the cruiser with no return path. Inside the cruiser, the faceless fall back toward a sealed door. Command-level access. The door is thick, reinforced, and already closing. A Marine throws a charge at the seam. The explosion blows the door inward. They surge through into a wider chamber where the ceiling is open to a breach, stars visible through torn plating. Loose papers and shards of glass float in the air. A faceless officer stands near a console, trying to transmit, hands shaking under the strobe light. The Marines raise rifles. A sudden blast hits the cruiser from outside. The floor tilts. The chamber rotates. Everyone slams into a wall as the cruiser takes a heavy cannon strike. The console sparks and dies. The faceless officer is thrown across the room. Hook, outside the cruiser, is being finished while the boarding team is still inside. In the void, a second GSF ship, another destroyer, has lined up a perfect shot on the crippled cruiser's engine section. Its guns fire in a tight burst. The rounds punch into the exposed engine housing and the cruiser's thrust finally fails completely. The cruiser begins to tumble. Slow at first, then faster. Fighters scatter away from the spinning hull. Debris spins with it, turning the space around the cruiser into a blender of metal fragments. Inside, the boarding team fights the rotation, mag boots clamping, bodies yanked sideways by shifting inertia. Faceless soldiers rush from a side corridor, trying to overwhelm them before the ship breaks apart. A Marine empties a magazine and then switches to a blade. A faceless soldier tackles him, both sliding toward the open breach where the stars are visible like an open mouth. They grapple on the edge. The Marine hooks a hand into a cable and drives the blade forward. The faceless soldier goes limp and floats away into the void. The Marines don't have time to breathe. The ship is still spinning. The hull is still cracking, and now a warning tone begins to howl through the cruiser. Steady, rising, unmistakable. Reactor instability. Hook. The cruiser is about to go critical, and the boarding team is still inside. A Marine leader looks up at the breach, at the stars, at the tumbling wreckage, at the destroyer drifting farther away. "Find an escape pod," he snarls. "Now!" And they run, through smoke, through sparks, through a ship that is dying around them, because if they don't get out in the next minute, they won't get out at all.